running through all our communications. It's faded away until I explained to Paul the concept, and he said, well, let's talk about it again. Let's see what this is all about. And so asked me to put together a presentation of Intouchness and some of the things I've learned through the years. Now, I met a lady called Marlene Ward. A couple of you will remember Marlene.
She was a member of our club.
Fantastic. Yes, okay. Marlene was a famous feminist, and she used to scare me to death until I managed to get a pin for 5 new members. They give you a pin for if you get 5 new members in your name. It was a beautiful thing, shaped like a diamond. The theme was diamonds in the rough. I gave this to her. I thought you might like this, Marlene. Well, I did the right thing, because I melted the ice, and she and I became friends from that moment to this, and we were still in touch occasionally, although she's in Australia. She was a training officer with IBM, and she had a passion to bring IBM's huge expertise into Toastmasters, and she would hold IBM seminars and under Toastmasters, and it was really good. And one day she held, this is when I met her first, she held what she called was a public relations parley. And in this public relations parley, she brought along a PR officer from IBM who was in charge of the switch from IBM to ISM. During isolation, several international companies were forced to withdraw from South Africa. I don't know if you remember that. And IBM withdrew, and they kept their organization going under the name of ISM. And they had huge television programs about it, television advertisements about it, and they had 2 huge seminars, one for their customers and one for their employees, to bring them into the picture so that they knew what was going on. They took it that seriously. I would have thought, gosh, just change the name, what's the difference? Huge. And this guy told us how he did it. There wasn't too much in that what is relevant to Toastmasters, but what there was 3 messages that he gave us, and that I remember to this day. The first one is, even if you've got nothing to communicate, communicate. So, you can imagine there's a conference going on, a big debate going on, trying to resolve a problem, and everybody outside is waiting. What are they going to do? Now, it's happening in Toastmasters now. It's happening with the REP, Revised Education. That everyone is saying, when's this thing coming out? But Toastmasters, to its credit, is coming out with information to say, we've made a bit of progress, we've done this, just hang in there, and the answer will come. So that is, communicate even if you've got nothing to communicate. Do that. Make sure people are up to date, that there's things going on, even though there's nothing tangible. That was the first thing. The second thing was, communicate until they complain. People seem to think that if you say something once, somebody else will hear that and know and be, au fait with it, be up to date with it. You hear something once, it goes straight over your head and you've forgotten it forever. You hear it twice, you might retain something. You hear it 3 times, it might start to get there. And so he said, the only symptom there is that somebody has heard what you said is if they complain and say, thank you, I know. There's no need to tell me anymore, I know. Dolph Kessner, who's a past district governor who great believer in PR, says, and then send it to them again after that. So, the real message is, don't expect people to know, remember, if you only tell them once. The third thing was, tell before they ask. I can't give you a good tangible example of this one that is relevant to Toastmasters, but if you imagine in a factory that they wanted to demolish a building with dynamite. And so they just demolish it. Dynamite, huge bang. Huge complaints from the community. What was that? Whereas if only they'd gone to the community beforehand and said, look, on Saturday morning at 10 o'clock, we're going to be demolishing this building with dynamite. It's going to be a huge bang. They're going to say, gosh, thanks for letting us know. No problem at all, go ahead. And there's a huge difference between that attitude and one of, what the hell was that? Simply with a message. So tell before they ask. The last glass of gin here. That's better. Now, and I've got a note here, communicate until they complain. You cannot give enough information. Now, Coca-Cola is, I understand, the biggest brand in the world, but they still keep pumping it with entertaining advertisements. They still keep doing it. So it's so necessary to keep that information going out. So sorry, I meant to mention that while we were talking about that point. Second thing I'd like to tell you about is something that happened to me with my old boss, Herbie Kepler. When Herbie was a junior manager, he was on a factory and he noticed that there was a sump in the factory which had a fence around it, and the gate on the fence was loose. So he got to an artisan and he said, would you go and fix that gate? It's not safe, would you go and fix it? But whatever you do, do not go into that sump. The sump was about 5 meters deep, concrete lined, and about 10 meters by 10 meters. Quite a big thing. So the artisan went there with his tools, and he started to work and dropped his spanner into the sump. He looked around, nobody about, and so he climbed down into the sump and was gassed. Somebody saw him and got him out and saved him. And Herbie went up to him afterwards and said, what were you doing? I told you not to go in the sump. And he said, I know, Herbie, I'm so sorry, but you didn't tell me why. So you have to be transparent. You have to give the whole picture to people for them to understand, and then they will have a much better grasp of things. So there it is, the artisan's job. He nearly died. You told me, but you didn't tell me why. BBC often has little leadership bites in their business programs. And I heard one the other day which I quite liked. It was about retaining people in companies. And in this particular bite, there were several companies featured, but Campbell Soups came forward and said that people will trust you if they can work it out for themselves. So if you tell them something, and then they can go somewhere and dig up the information themselves and find out that that is true, they will trust you. So they can find out for themselves, they will trust you. And what we're talking about here is transparency. And transparency is going to be a theme through this now, and how important transparency is. Now, good communication with your team. I've had lots of discussions with Althea here. Althea is a specialist in communication, personal communications with people. She and I have got very similar views on this, and I'm hoping she's going to chip in with ideas herself if anything comes to mind. I warned you. And first of all, face-to-face communication. So sitting across a table with somebody, or even Skype possibly, then that is where you can use body language, you can use eye contact, and it's for sensitive situations. If you want to convey that a relative is lost, then that would be the way to do it. Wouldn't want to do it in any other way unless you have to. A way of conveying bad news, and a way of getting buy-in with people. Resort to that face-to-face. The next one is telephone or Skype call. And this is vital, and it is a pity that telephone seems to be going out of fashion. Not many years ago, the sort of internal discussion in Toastmasters was, you don't really want any district officers, don't want any cabinet members from Cape Town, do you? Or Durban. I mean they're so far away and out of touch. Now, with increased communication, we have cabinet members from Zimbabwe, from all over the country. It's wonderful because of the increased communication, better communication with things like SMSs, an amazing accident, I understand, with the telecommunications people. It wasn't a deliberate thing at all. And then WhatsApp, all these things. But there seems to be a swing away from the use of telephone, of verbal communication, one-on-one, to the SMS, the one-way communication. So it's rather a pity that we have that advance, which is improved in communication, but the skill of using a telephone seems to be fading away. And it's rather a pity, and today we will be doing some role plays with telephones to see if we can instill a bit more of that skill. But with a phone, you can have discussions, you can generate understandings, and it is a vital component for us carrying out our leadership skills. Then we move on to one-way communication, and there we have obviously email, we have SMS, we have WhatsApp, we even have letters, which used to be the way. I remember sending out my programs to Florida Toastmasters. I had to get to Rudaport Post Office by noon on Thursdays in order that they would get the letter of the program in it by Tuesday.
Wow.
And I couldn't see anything wrong with it.
And they probably came to the meetings rather than sending a last minute, sorry, can't be there.
I only had one person pull out of a speech in a year.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah, and he was stared at.
That's amazing.
How many years ago this letter communication?
3 or 4, 5 maybe?
No.
Late 80s.
80s.
Awesome.
So in other words, before Frank.
Okay, so those one-way communications, they do have advantages though. If you want to share complex information, the email is the way to do it. Send a report, it's wonderful. When discussion is not required, when you're confirming detail, confirming decisions, that sort of thing is wonderful for. And the subtle, real advantage is you can send an email any time you like. You haven't got to worry about waking anybody up with an email. They'll just go in the morning and they'll get their email. And making simple announcements like club meeting or something like that. Now, moving on to the telephone itself, then the telephone technique, how one goes about a telephone, making a telephone call. The first thing that you do is you make a plan. It's an important call now. We're not talking about ringing a member of your family, just wish them happy birthday or something like that. We're talking about a professional telephone call. And this, you must plan. Everything that you want to say, and it consists of a list of items, and this is what Althea drummed into me, was respect the person's time. Whenever you make a call, plan it carefully, and be economic with time to respect them, to respect their time. And do we have a sergeant here today? Brian, can you get me that envelope? See my cup of coffee there? This is what's on there.
Must respect time.
Yes, respect time. So I'm moving now.
Get cold.
Eric, don't worry. So having done the planning,
Envelope.
bearing in mind the translucent envelope there.
The envelope. The plastic.
Plastic envelope.
Plastic.
Thank you, Frank. Then, having got it all sorted out exactly in your mind, what you want to talk to this person about, thinking, then you make the call. For me, it's vital to be enthusiastic. Paul, how are you? How I start all my calls. So someone is receiving a call that is finding someone enthusiastic at the other end of the line. First thing I ask is it convenient to talk? I will be 17 minutes, and I wouldn't be, that would be a special one. I will be just 5 minutes. I've got a couple of things I want to discuss with you. Now, that leaves the person with the choice to be able to say, yes, 5 minutes is fine, or no, can you ring back in 2 hours? And when we discussed this, you didn't like my saying, well, you keep a little bit of control of the situation with that. But I still think you do. I think you keep a little bit of control there. Not brutal control, but you know when the chances. And I never ask anyone to ring me back. I always say, I will ring you back in 2 hours. I always do that. And And I find that works for me. Then, this I got from the web. Then have a little bit of banter with the person. Talk to them about, hey, that was a good party we had last night. You can do that sort of thing, but be careful with it. Sometimes it's not appropriate. You might want to say, how are you getting on with Mabel? Mabel and I broke up 2 years ago. You know, so you don't want. So be careful with the banter. Make sure it is relevant. And if when in doubt, don't do it. Then the reason for calling, and that is your list of items. So the reason for calling, you've made a list. You say, and you're not going to go through the whole list, but you say, I'm going to talk to you about semi-annual dues, or I'm going to talk to you about area governor reports. Again, I'm harping, respect time, don't go on for too long, stick to the items on the agenda. Ask questions. Stick to time on the agenda, and then thank at the end of the call. And if you concluded something, I suggest there you use an email to confirm what you have concluded. And I'm so glad to see you all writing notes, because now I have a handout for you. So in here I have that slide in a much nicer form. So it's not split in two, so you can have a copy of that for when you're doing the role plays. So Intouchness is all about being in touch with your team. So the cabinet is going to be in touch with the division directors. The division directors are going to be in touch with the area directors. The area directors are going to be in touch with the clubs and any combination of that. And to do that, follow these principles. With it, we build a relationship. As Paul said, find out everybody who you are in contact with, find out their preferences. Some people say, sorry, I don't do the phone. I don't. But I have never found anybody, and I've asked several people, I've never found anybody who has objected to a call for the sake of the call. They've objected to my call because I've said nasty things to them. But that doesn't happen very often. But never simply because I've used the telephone. I do not use the phone, please do not use it again. Never had that. It's never happened to me. I've never heard of it happening to anybody. People will receive a call, even if they're a little bit worried about making the call themselves. They may prefer emails, they may prefer SMSs, they may prefer WhatsApp. What time would you like the call? What time would you like it? And if it's first thing in the morning, if you're a morning person or an evening person, find that out. Make a note of it, exactly as Paul said. Then, be in touch with information. And here you have the dashboard. The dashboard, I call it the dashboard, a euphemism for what's available on the Toastmaster International website. Be familiar with that, become expert at it. Okay, that's a rule. What's the word? It's non-negotiable. Become an expert at that. And Margie, who's an expert at all of these things, has shown us a thing called TM Tools, and of course Rafferty stuff. Become expert at that. Become really in touch with what's going on in your division, in every respect.
Sorry, what's Rafferty?
Margie?
Mike Rafferty. Mike Rafferty hobby is creating stats, and he has every possible stat about every aspect of Toastmasters, and so does George Marshall, who's the author of TM Tools. And if you want to know clubs that are just distinguished, if you want to know how many awards a club has achieved, if you want to know how many awards Jason has achieved, you can type his name in, you can find anything about any member, any club. It's phenomenal. If you just scroll down the options, my preference is TM Tools because I never have to go anywhere else. I even access the dashboard from TM Tools.
Can we get the web up on his?
We'll work a plan to do
Work a plan to get, so then you can show us actually what you do.
And so Margie will be
I think
distributing
it's
these.
important.
Margie's going to be distributing these tools to all the division directors who've got them. The links.
Okay.
Awesome.
Now then, the dashboard, TM Tools, Rafferty is all very well, but that is what has been registered. And And why you are being in touch with your team is to find the actual situation. So they might only have one CC registered, but your communication through your area government to the clubs, they'll say, well, actually, we've got 3 others. George is on CC8, Fred's on CC7, and Margaret's on CC9. So they're closer to the 3, and that is the important thing. That being in touch with the actual situation of your clubs. And we call this in English, on the ball. Do that, you'll be on the ball. Everyone understand that quaint old English expression? It's from football, and if you have got the ball, then you are in control of the situation. Intouchness, an agenda, which I mentioned earlier, that is your list of items, and I've got a couple of examples of agendas for you here. These were ones which I'm surprised to see were actually emailed. So I must say I thought I would have faxed them. Wrong one. So this is an agenda for discussion that I emailed to a lady called Alice Hampshire, who was the division governor of H, and I was going to call her at a certain time that I would have put in here, and then I will talk to her about those topics. Blue Chip was an old internal system in district for monitoring progress. We didn't like what World Headquarters was giving us. We had our own internal one called Blue Chip. It so happens that this was used later using Ted Corcoran's method to build the system, the DCP we have now. Then talk to her about the educational, CTMs, ATMs, DTMs, speechcraft, youth leadership, success leadership, club officer training, all those critical success factors and other things, club officer training, judging, conferences and TLI and education sessions at clubs. So I would phone this lady on the appointed date and time and discuss these items. That's how I did it. I'm not saying you do it. I'm saying this is how I did it. It worked. Maybe you can get some ideas from it of how you can do it.
Question. On that number of items,
Yeah.
how long would that telephone call be on average?
If she was short of time, and a lot of them you skip through because these are just agenda items for any news. If it was a pal, and Alice was a great friend of mine, we'd often have half an hour. But that would be chat as well. So, but in terms of the professional stuff, the Toastmaster professional stuff, probably about 15-20 minutes. Okay, that's that sort of thing. But as I said, if there was something to discuss on each one of those, I would think it would be over half an hour. Okay, but don't forget this was every month. And here's one for the LGM. This is what I did for Nella, later district governor. She's Lieutenant Governor of Marketing at the time. And she sent this to Elise van Rensburg when she was division governor. Marketing update, and she'd be asking her about new clubs, about club rescue, membership, area governor reports, semi-annual dues, club alignment, and anything else. So it's critical success factors of the marketing function. Okay, so there's a couple of examples for you, and that's the end of Intouchness principles. Any questions so far?
Yes, I have one question.
Yes.
Frequency of calls, what would you recommend? Is there
Monthly.
monthly? Just once a month?
Once a month. Once a month, the division governors, as they were called then, would receive a call from the LGET, one call from the LGM, and then district governor would give calls on a random ad hoc basis. Okay. When I was district governor, I had 2 district officers who conveniently resigned on me, effectively, so I had to do a lot myself. Which I thoroughly enjoyed, so it wasn't too sorry. Okay. So any more questions on Intouchness? We'll come back to it with the telephone calls in a minute. Let's move on to the healthy teams. Have any of you seen this before? Building a healthy team.
Yeah.
You've seen it? Super. I think this is one of the best workshops that Toastmasters ever produced. And I'd like to go over the first part with you. We won't be doing the disc thing, we'll be doing the 5 traits of a healthy team, and we will analyse your team's current state, and you're going to have to determine this from the brief contact you've had today. It's going to have limited value, but it will teach you the process, and you'll get some ideas from it. And then we'll probably do it again in a few months' time to see how this team is coming along. Then, after that, well, this is what I've included in that you'll discuss the traits and make plans for the future if something obvious comes out of it. Right, have we got the handouts? So that's it, good. One's for everyone?
Can I do one side for you, Frank?
It's a bit complex because I didn't make an order, so...
Thank you.
This is from the pack I showed you. Page 3 and 4 are the pages you're getting, and it's the list of questions. So start off with the questions on page 3. And don't agonize over them. Just answer what comes to mind.
Individual.
Yep. Do you feel about the people you've been working with today? This team. We are a team. Relate to this team in here, this room as far as best you can. I understand your shortness of time with the team is going to limit it. That doesn't matter.
So we're talking about division director teams now.
No, we're talking about this team.
This team in this room.
In this room.
Director.
Okay, director.
Yeah. It's halfway there. Yeah.
Have you got that back? Yeah, we should do that. For this team.
It's not the best designed format for the scene because there's one question on page 4.
Oh, that'd be awesome.